Two, one, and we're going. How will you feel having allowed circumstance to impose itself upon you, and having allowed 10 more years of your finite life to pass, doing what you know will not fulfill you? If you telescope out 10 years and know with 100% certainty that it's a path of disappointment and regret, and if we define risk as the likelihood of an irreversible negative outcome, inaction is the greatest risk of all. That's a quote from The 4 Hour Work Week by Timothy Ferriss. And, I think the deeper lesson here is a little self explanatory. Inaction is definitely probably the worst thing that you can do. And today we're joined by a man of action in numerous different ways. Phillip Wylie is a senior penetration tester, co-author of the Pentester Blueprint along with co-author Kim Crawley, founder of the Pwn School Project, host of the Hacker Factory podcast on ITSP Magazine, brings with him over 20 years of experience spanning from telecommunications and higher education to the financial sector. Welcome, Phillip Wylie.
Thanks for the awesome intro. Happy to be joining today. Thanks for inviting me.
And thank you so much for joining. I'm very incredibly honored to have this opportunity with you. And most recently on ITSP, I'm super, super thankful for that opportunity. For those, I highly doubt that anyone in my community hasn't heard of you, but for the random YouTuber browsing around that may not have heard of you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. I've been working in the industry, actually September made 24 years. 24 years ago this month, I began my career as a system administrator. Spent a little over 6 years in system administration, and then moved into cybersecurity, which I have January will make 18 years of experience in cybersecurity, with the last 9 years spent in offensive security. So I started my offensive cybersecurity career back in 2012. And the first 5 years I spent in consulting. So I've done web app pen testing, network pen testing, including Wi-Fi pen testing. I was a red team lead for a while. So I got into education back in 2018. And it's kind of like I found my calling. Over the years, I've been competitive and always wanted to be the best at whatever I do, or one of the best. And just kind of like powerlifting, I found out I had to stay and start competing my age group, because it's hard to keep up with younger people. And it just doesn't happen unless you're just some phenomenal athlete. But the same thing with hacking and pen testing, trying to be the best there. You're going to still be able to put in the late hours, because as I get older, it's a lot tougher. And I kind of came to this conclusion back in 2018. Maybe I can't be the best hacker or best pen tester, but I think I could probably be one of the best mentors and teachers. And that's an area I've found, because I'm pretty good at listening to people. I like to help people, and I like to share my passions. So, pen testing, ethical hacking are passions of mine. So those are fun to share. So that's kind of where I found my calling. And that's why I spend so much time in this area, because I started teaching and got into doing conference workshops, speaking at conferences, and then doing podcasts, webinars, and live streams. So I've just kind of really found the area that I like and thrive in. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
And some people might be surprised to hear all of that in one person. You kind of like a modern day, Renaissance man, just kind of doing everything, and also at a really like high competitive level. I'm curious, is there anything that burns you out, or how do you avoid burnout with so much stuff going on in your life?
Yeah, it's pretty easy to get burnt out, and I just have to find times to step back and take a break here and there. One of the things I've started doing is limiting what I do on weekends. If it's like a conference, I'll do like conferences like last weekend, Friday of last week, or Friday the week before, or I guess the weekend before last, we'll say, since Friday spans over the weekend. On a Friday, I taught a 4-hour workshop for B-Sides Orlando. On Sunday, for women cyber jitsu, I did a 4-hour workshop for them. And so sometimes you just have to take breaks. And one of the things I do like career wise, normally in December, I take the last 2 weeks of the month off. And this year, planning for December to kind of be an easier month. I plan to have all my podcast episodes recorded by November. So that way, December will be an easier time. So just scheduling breaks. I have to take breaks from time to time. And one of the things I've had to start doing too is for mentoring and stuff, I really haven't had an off switch. Someone message me anytime of the day or whatever, weekend, weekday, I usually answer it. And I've gotten to where sometimes maybe on the weekends, I'm not as active answering messages and let it wait until Monday. Cause typically most cases it can wait a couple days and just doing those things. Because when people are asking for the help, it's not like they're wanting it right away. They want the help. So I just had to come to grips with that, realize that, sometimes, it doesn't hurt to wait a couple days before you can help someone. So just getting the breaks, that's kind of the thing there. This year I've done less conference talking because last year I spoke at or did workshops at 28 conferences last year, 28 virtual conferences. And some of those I did two things. I might have given two workshops in one conference. One of the conferences I gave two talks at one conference, but even to some of the other conferences being virtual, there were several conferences where I spoke twice in one day at different conferences. So out of those 28 conferences, it always wasn't one thing. And some days it was multiple things. So this year I kind of slowed down a little bit on that, although being on podcasts and that sort of thing, live streams, I've done a lot more of that this year than I did last year, but just kind of, and plus the thing is too, with the conference thing, cutting back on that, doing the podcasts and live streams is a little bit different. So, still doing what you like, but not doing it too much to not like it anymore.
Yeah. I'm really curious because you have a number of different platforms now. What was kind of the idea behind the Pwn School project? Because I've read a fair amount about it, but I'm sure for the listeners they might think, well, I hear the Pwn School. What is that? What is that about? So I think people would love to hear kind of what the backstory of it and how it came to be.
Sure. I guess this is what I would call my passion project, because teaching and mentoring are my passions. But when I was teaching the first semester at Dallas College back in 2018, the semester was about to come to an end. Dallas College only had one offensive security type course. And so a lot of the students really liked the topic and wanted to learn more. And they said, what can we do to learn more? So I was kind of thinking, maybe I could get together with people on the weekends and we can, do projects, or, I could teach them, do lectures and that sort of thing, just kind of hands-on training, and kept, kicking us back and forth on what to do there. And then it was two young people in the community that were going to another community college and they wanted to get into my summer class, but it was too late to get transferred because they had to, apply to the school, submit transcripts just to get in to take my class. And they were really two sweet kids, and are young people. They're early 20s or so back then. And one of them is pretty cool. One of them just recently graduated with her 4-year degree, but I was really disappointed they couldn't get in the class. So I thought, I need to do something. And we were messaging on Twitter, and I said, I'm going to start something up that, you weren't able to get in the class, but a way for you to learn. So Pwn School was a way to offer education for those if you can't afford it or didn't want to have to go the college route where you have to apply to the school and go through all these tests and prerequisites just to get to take the class that you want to take. So it's just kind of, just kind of do it yourself teaching. The interesting thing was when I started it, I intended on doing lectures each meeting, as monthly meetings. I hold 2 meetings a month. They were physical starting out in 2018. The first part of 2019, I started offering my class through Zoom because I had people that were interested in other countries and other states that want to take my classes. So I thought, I could offer the classes on Zoom and go that route. So we started that back in 2019. So I started also offering Pwn School through Zoom so people could just join the monthly meetings through Zoom. And then when the pandemic hit, it was a good idea because everything was virtual. I had already been going virtual, kind of hybrid than just 100% virtual, but kind of getting started out, I had people, there's a lot of people out there to volunteer, but not everyone has the time to do something every month or weekly. And I had a lot of people in my local community that maybe they had other commitments, had kids and stuff, that they couldn't do something like I was doing as frequent, but periodically they could help. And so I had like 3 people right from the beginning offer to come to Pone School and do a lecture or give a talk. And so that's kind of how it started out. It was basically, I was going to do it myself. I really wasn't thinking about getting help, but then I got help from people in the community. And with the virtual thing, I've had people from other states. Samuel Kimmons was the first one to do now he actually came in person. I guess it was Jared Fulkins. He was also in the Tribe of Red Team Hackers book. He actually did my first virtual on-site talk because he had a C2 or something. He had created C2, or actually it was some type of deception technology he came up with, because he was working at a school. Their budget was limited, so he created this technology that is open source, anyone could use for free. And so using Zoom, he remotely gave the talk, and of course we projected on the screen of this restaurant that we went to. And so it's been pretty interesting. And one of the things about Pone School, it hasn't been as educational as I'd like. So one of my goals, and I'm just kind of on the verge of getting this rolling, and when I started Pone School, is mainly going to be offensive security topics, since that's what I know. And I know a lot of people in that area, because you can find a lot of blue team meetups. So you can find a lot of different ISSA or ISACA meetups. A lot of these blue team, you don't see as many. You've got the local DEF CON groups, but it's not always 100% offensive either.
Yeah.
So one of my goals is to make Pone School more educational. Currently, I'm doing virtual, and then I'm doing one in Denton, because Denton, Texas is where I grew up. I was born and raised there. And so to give something back to my community, my hometown, that meant a lot to me. And then I knew some guys locally there that worked for a company in security. So kind of give them something to do. And I knew also had some help, getting set up and run the meetings in Denton. But kind of get back on my train of thought. I'm really wanting to make Pone School more educational. So one of my plans is to start recording content and even do some live lecturing, and start offering, kind of a entry level or beginner pen testing course free through Pone School.
And I like what you guys are doing there, because you have almost everything under the methodology to some extent, spanning from OSINT all the way to like freaking machine learning, man. There's so much value there. I am like 100% behind what you're doing with Pone School Project. I think it's awesome. And that kind of ties into an interesting conversation, because I would contend there's far more, like offensive based or adversary based, red team based kind of content out there, but that may not have been the same thing when you were getting into InfoSec. What were some resources that helped you back then, and has it changed significantly as much as I think it has over the last couple of years, or has it not changed that much?
It's changed tremendously, because when I started out pen testing, I got to start out consulting. And so the one thing I was missing is I'd run vulnerability scans and managed pen testing for the company I was working for. I never got to do actual pen testing there, but I knew I needed to learn how to hack. And so when I was starting the job, I started doing my research and found the OSCP, and that was back in 2012. So it really wasn't as popular then. Back then, if you were wanting to be a pen tester, or you were in security, you may have known of it. Now there's people that know about OSCP that's never worked a day in their life in IT or never worked in security, that they just got out there and they saw a YouTube video or someone. And that's one of the things too, is it's great now that we have all the great content. You have your content, you've got like people like IPSEC streaming, you've got John Hammonds that's got some really good stuff. Joe Helly, the mayor, and the cyber mentor, all these people offering this content, and then people just coming out with new stuff. I mean, even from like the bug bounty side, Katie Paxton Fear, Insider PhD, then Farah Holly from think she was a Bug Crowd, and she does a lot of videos and a lot of stuff on uh, Instagram. And then of course you got Stoke and Nahum Sek. I mean, and Jason Haddix. So there's so much stuff out there now, and it's good. But when I was getting started out, one of the main blogs we had was Got Milk, and Got Milk, he actually works for Offensive Security now, but he had his blog on tips for the OSCP, and there wasn't a lot of blogs on that. There was some different message boards and forums, and I met a couple friends of mine that I made from doing a study group, because towards the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, uh, I met three other guys on this message board that was geared towards, IT certifications. They were going through the OSCP, and so we kind of started a virtual study group. And one of them was in India, so we've never got to meet in person, but the other two are here in the U.S., and we see each other at conferences from time to time. And actually, one of them goes by Hutch. He works for Set Solutions. I'm going to get to see him at HughesCon coming up, so it's kind of cool to get to see these people and stay in touch with them. But the study groups helped a lot, and so the message board, there were some people out there shared some tips on on the OSCP and study resources, but not like it is now. Now you've got you got like TJ Knowles, his OSCP write-ups and his OSCP type boxes to prepare for the OSCP. So there's a lot of good stuff out there now, and the content's has even gotten better. It's good to see that with Offensive Security evolving their content. Back when I was going through it, you had to do a lot of self-study.
Oh yeah.
They're including stuff, some Active Directory and PowerShell stuff. Back then, when I was getting started out, PowerShell really wasn't a thing in the industry. So things are evolved, and there's a lot more information out there. You see the success rate of people succeeding on OSCP is getting better. You see people that are spending a lot of time on Hack the Box using those recommendations of TJ Knoll, and it's getting easier which is good to see, because why make it more difficult? And that's one of the things about mentoring. If you can find a mentor or find a study group, I highly recommend it, because those people can help you advance quicker. It's like one of my best friends and mentees. He's one of the best pen testers I've ever helped out and recommended. He's been in the industry coming up on 4 years, pen testing alone. Outside of that, he's spent a lot of years in IT. He was in IT a little bit before I was. We met during our CAD drafting career, and I helped him, and just the things I learned, I was able to share with him. And one of the things I do with mentoring, sometimes I'll share resources, but I don't spoon feed someone, because you become like Google. So if they need to know how to do something, they won't look for themselves. And so it's like the old saying where you can, teach a man to fish, or, you can give the man food. So you teach them to fend for themselves, then they'll do a lot better. So that was kind of the way I did things. But just seeing how much, and he put in a lot of hours and a lot of effort, that was all on him, because you can help people, and if they're not going to put in the effort, they're not going to advance. But to see how quickly he was able to come up and learn has been great, because when you're first going through this stuff on your own, you kind of have to sort through resources and say, see if it's good or not, because you got a lot of people out there recommending stuff. And kind of one of the things you brought up on my podcast, the Hacker Factory, with learn from, take advice from people that are in the field, and not someone, because sometimes it's with these people, it's just theoretical. This is what they've heard, or this is what the CEH manual might have told them, and they're not getting it from industry professionals. And there's a lot of popular streamers that aren't ethical hackers, pen testers, that do Cisco training and that sort of stuff, that's jumping on the hacker bandwagon. So having people to help you with good resources makes a difference, because you can go on Udemy and spend a lot of time and money. Although their courses are pretty affordable, you can waste a lot of time on resources that are not so good. So having a mentor, good resources on blogs and content that you can go through and find the good information, so you don't waste a lot of your time, and you can learn quicker. There's things that, you may have to read a 300-page book to get some of these concepts, and maybe a 30-minute mentoring call, you could pick up a lot of that stuff and save a lot of time and pain.
Yeah, and I think that opens another interesting conversation, because there's at a certain point there will be people where they'll have an idea of kind of what the field is about, but they may not understand like the nuances between different subfields. And I know for me personally, after I got out of the Air Force, there were a number of different network engineering jobs that weren't exactly network engineering related, but they kind of fell under that umbrella title. Is there a difference between pen testing and red teaming? And if there is, what would I, as a newcomer, want to know about those differences?
Yeah, there's truly a difference, and there's been a lot of generalization, just like with blue team. Not all the defensive stuff is the same. Some people are doing threat hunting, threat intelligence. Some people are doing operations type security. When I was getting started out, operations was really what we referred to back then as network security. Some of the roles and names have changed. And just thinking about this, and you're talking about like some of the network engineering roles and stuff, it really makes me think there's been a lot of confusion or mislabeling of roles in the industry because HR has a limited number of titles they can have. And I remember when I was a system administrator back then, uh, they were referring to it as like network analyst or network engineers, although you're just working on servers. It's not the same thing. So the system engineer and sysadmin were really more realistic, but the same thing getting back to offensive security. So pen testing, red teaming has been used sometime to generalize all of offensive security, but it's really not. And I try to distinguish the difference because a lot of people, red team sounds cool. And sometimes, I don't know, it's sometimes people like the titles that make it sound more cool. And sometimes it's confusion. You see someone that says they're red team, but you can see they're doing web app pen tests, and red team is more adversary emulation. And so this is, one of the main differences. I like to compare pen testing with red teaming. With pen testing, you're trying to find all the vulnerabilities and trying to exploit anything that can be exploited. With red team or adversarial emulation, you're trying to emulate a threat actor. So you're trying to find something that would be equivalent to a real world breach, something you're able to go in to exploit, get into the systems, be able to exfil data, something similar to a real world breach. And you may try to see if you can find one or more exploitation paths because you may lose connection, lose that connection, and you're trying to maintain persistence. And you hear all the time about persistence when it comes to pen testing, and persistence is really not as important on a pen test. It's really more important, more needed on red teaming. And then you hear about trying to go undetected, and usually that's more of adversary emulation. The pen test, we've got 40 hours to do this pen test, so we don't have a lot of time to try to be quiet. We're in there doing vulnerability scans. We don't have time to just focus on manual testing. And when you're trying to be quiet, that's kind of hard to do with Nmap too. So there's a difference there, and so I think people really should see the difference. And there's different people that think, one of my opinions, and people could start out red team directly, but based on my experience and the way I learned, it was easier for me to come through pen testing and then do red teaming later on, because you learn a bunch of different techniques and tactics. You learn all that, and then once you get into red teaming, where you need to be quiet and more methodical in your approach, then you have these tools and that background to use that.
And I totally agree. And I know I had said recently on your podcast that I think if you have foundational pen testing skills, one can jump into red teaming right away. But that is really dependent on what kind of background you have, because so I am one of those people, but with my extensive history of network engineering, I was already aware there's logs, there are places where those logs get sent.
Mhm.
And as part of my prep, I actually have like a makeshift like sock like in my apartment, because it's really important for me to collect that data while I'm building payloads and stuff. So yeah, that's a super good call out.
Yeah, but I think you could jump more into it, because there's if you wanted to go in red teaming, I think that is a possibility directly, because when you think of all there is in pen testing, because over the years there was a short period of time where I specialized in web app pen testing or application pen testing, but there's so much to it. It's hard to know everything. And the people that really get good, and I think after a while, if you really want to get good at something, you need to specialize. And red teaming is a type of specialization. With red teaming, you get to leverage social engineering and some physical security assessments as well. And you don't have to do that. I mean, some people have a hard time in social situations. So maybe, trying to do vishing or trying to talk your way into a building may not work for you, but there's phishing that's not going to be affected by that, and those sort of things. So I think there's specializations, and to really get good, because you look at some of the folks from like Spectre Ops, these guys focus a lot on the red teaming and stuff, and there are a lot of hacking Active Directory, and most of the tools and stuff you see are for Windows environments. So you kind of need to specialize and say if someone started out as a sysadmin or, like a network engineer like yourself, you have knowledge of this, or if you worked in security. But I think, at some point you could specialize, and then just kind of knowing some of those areas, if someone's really strong in a Windows environment, then red teaming may be a way to specialize, because I mean, you don't have to become a application pen testing expert to get in the area. And there's so much stuff to do. So really, sometimes when you specialize, you can really get good, because you see the people that are the real ninjas. Okay, you're Nahum Sec and Stoke, they're talking about web app pen testing related stuff or bug bounty, and they're not going into Active Directory hacking and all this. So I think you have to kind of specialize. But yeah, I think you could do either one. But for me, it helped to have all that base. And one of the advantages too, if you go that route of the pen testing route, then you get a better idea of what you like in areas you can specialize in. But if what people really think of when they hear about pen testing or ethical hacking is really more similar to what red teaming does, because everyone thinks you're trying to go in, without being detected and doing something, emulating a threat actor. So I think that's really what most people think about when you're thinking about red teaming. This is really more of what it's like. You get in as a pen tester. Some people may not like the report writing and then going in and validating all the SSL and TLS related certificate vulnerabilities. That stuff can be kind of boring too, there's a ton more tedious, boring stuff that you have to document on pen testing reports.
Yeah, well, I think that's good info for people to know. And I would even say maybe even on the business side, because it's, hey, if we have, some objective that we need to do, hey, which should we spend an outrageous amount of money on, a pen test or a red team? And it's kind of like what you said. I have it in my notes. Inside the Mind of a Threat Actor on Cover 6 Solutions with Ty Wilson's company. And I remember you had mentioned that maybe not so much these days, but right when this kind of debate really broke out, there was a lot of companies looking to become or more concerned with becoming PCI compliant than they were with their actual security. So I'm kind of interested to get your thoughts on that. Do you think that has changed at all, or do you think we're all still kind of going about blind?
I think there's still a lot of that. I think there's still a lot of people just based on my experience and working with companies where you're doing pen testing towards PCI, the thing I'd really like to see companies from a business perspective, we really need to quit worrying about being compliant. Compliant is part of the project. It's, just a piece of the puzzle. It's not everything. So you make sure you're secure and then compliant at the same time. In some cases, if you're doing things securely, you're going to be compliant by design, but there's still a lot of that. And one of my biggest pet peeves with companies is filing risk acceptances. Because back in 2014, during my career, I was just doing application pen tests, and my favorite all-time hack, and actually my license plate, I got a personalized license plate, and it's I heart SQLI.
Yeah.
And from this pen test I did, I was able to, and it was a web application pen test from the internet, and from a SQL injection vulnerability, I was able to get command line access. They had XP command shell enabled. And so I submitted the report, and the customer filed a risk acceptance as a dev box.
Oh, no, you can't do that.
That's for people that are really not into security that much, or just kind of getting started. This would be the equivalent to saying, okay, this door in the building leads into the janitor section of the building. This is maintenance. You're in the maintenance part of the building. You're in the building. So, I mean, you can go through another door to get to something else. I mean, it's, everything else was out of scope because I was able to get to the command. I was able to dump the hash that was running the system account for Microsoft Internet for IS. I was able to dump that service account, and it happened to be NT System Authority, and it was password all lowercase number 1. And so I couldn't go past that because it'd be going out of scope. I could have, tried to use lateral movement to another system on the network or whatever, but I had to kind of stop there. So, I mean, I doubt that they had that box segmented from everything else on their network. So,
yeah, and I can't really talk much because I'm an internal employee, so I'm completely bound by NDA. But it is there have been some things that I've seen on the job that are just like, what on earth were you thinking? Like, how was this ever a good idea? I wish I could go more into detail about that, but you kind of going back in a less critical, like less criticizing direction for me personally. If you had advice for newcomers, like if I were a newcomer coming onto the field and I started my first day on the job, I might be a little surprised that I only get external assessments. What if I was to fall into that category of employment? What would you suggest I do to kind of maybe avoid that situation, or maybe some things that I can do to build up, my popularity or my clout or my skill base, and kind of skip over maybe the boring assessments at the beginning?
Yeah, I think the best thing you do there is what you learn on your own time. Because one of the things like to share with folks is don't be a 9 to 5er. So that meaning only time you're thinking about this stuff or studying is when you're at work. The only time you're training is if the company pays for you to go to a course. If you really want to do good at this, unless you're just some genius and you can do it all in 40 hours a week, you need to be learning on your own. So some of the ways you could advance your career there is, learning how to do internal pen tests, learning Active Directory, since most enterprise environments are using Active Directory, learning how to hack Active Directory, understanding that. So spend your time learning, because one of the best, my second company working consulting, I was fortunate to work somewhere that I could do anything I wanted to, as long as I, studied for it, read a white paper, prepared for it. They'd let me do whatever I wanted. And so that's what I did. So at least one thing, let the company know you're wanting to learn other areas. As you're studying and learning things, let them know what you're learning, so you get the opportunity to do some of that other stuff. So in your free time, do the internal stuff, because internal, you're going to have access to Active Directory, some things you wouldn't have externally. But there's some similarities to network pen testing, just a lot less on the external part that you'd find internally. But yeah, I would start working towards that area, because whenever I was getting started out, I was mainly doing external and internal network, and I got to start doing more web app related stuff. So just keep learning that stuff on your own, and learning Active Directory. And the thing is too, is don't just focus on just the hacking stuff. So you're wanting to do internal pen tests, take some courses around Active Directory, or learn Active Directory, build Active Directory in your home environment, learn how that works. Because one of my first managers as a pen tester, what he always encouraged us to build stuff. He never did say, go take this hacking course or that. There wasn't as many options back then, but he was saying build stuff. And that's a good way to learn, because before I got into security, when I was in IT, I taught myself web design. And so when I was designing websites for my customers, because I did it as a side project, I had a server set up at home running Red Hat. That was back when you could get Red Hat for free. I think it was actually right around the time there's Red Hat Enterprise. But I had Red Hat running on my server, and I was running Apache web server, hosting my own DNS and email, because my web hosting company gave me 5 static IP addresses. And so I was getting experience with Apache web server. And so by the time I moved over to pen testing, I was familiar with the directory structure of Apache web server and config files. So just learning how this stuff is put together. So just building a home lab with these different types of uh, targets on there, building Active Directory. You can go to exploit DB, find some vulnerable applications, install that in your environment. Not all the exploits have links to the applications, but you can look up the versions and download those and install that and kind of build out your own thing. And one of the things as doing workshops and stuff that I wish I would have done earlier on was get into building more like CTF type systems or vulnerable systems on my own, setting those up to attack instead of just going out to hack the box and those things, which is important. Those are good resources, but just learning how to build those systems and learning how to configure them to be vulnerable, there's a lot there, because then you could use it as an attacker when you're trying to find vulnerabilities.
And in another kind of weird parallel, it opens the door to, I guess, kind of like that the old dichotomy of, which is going to benefit me the most? Is it higher education or certifications or self study? I'm really curious to get your thoughts on it, because I have my own, but I would be a liar if I said they weren't a little bit biased.
I'm going to say if you've got the base level knowledge and stuff, if you're someone, that's just getting started out, there is some value in college, a formal education. One of the biggest advantages to that is going to be internships, because if you're someone trying to get started, you only have your foot in the door yet. If you get an internship, you're going to be a lot more likely to get a job, because, internships, they know you have zero experience. It's all based on what you've learned in school, and they're giving you a chance. Then however long the internship runs, then now you've got, 3 months, 6 months worth of experience that you can put on your resume. And, experience is usually the showstopper that prevents you from getting the job. So from, formal education, that's one of the advantages there. Some of the disadvantages is sometimes that information is outdated. Some of the people teaching have never worked in the field, so they're going on based on the book, and here, what someone else said, someone else's experience, and whoever wrote the book may not, they may not even have experience in the industry, or maybe their experience is not all that good. I mean, because you see some of these books on pen testing and more of the stuff that are based around some of the other certifications, and some of the stuff's not 100% accurate. So sometimes that could be outdated, but then, there's exceptions to the rules, because, I was teaching at a community college and I had experiences pen testing. John Helmus, he's a pen tester and he teaches at a college. Sam Bone over in San Francisco, I think San Francisco Community College is something. I don't think he's worked as a pen tester, but he really understands the concept. He has a lot of hands-on labs. So these are exceptions to the rules, but a lot of people teaching these colleges have never done a pen test. They only know what it's supposed to be like. And it's kind of like you were mentioning, getting advice from people that actually done it, is a good way to go. But as far as, trying to learn offensive security, it's really hard to find. You go to some community college or university, they've got like a ethical hacking class and that's it. And sometimes it's based on CEH or Pentest Plus. Pentest Plus I like for methodology, but there's still things missing there. So I think self-study and certification route is good. For me, certifications are good for HR to get your foot in the door. And certifications doesn't always, like OSCP kind of proves that someone's able to do something, but you need to be able to learn it too, and not just focus on the certification. So when you're working on certifications, don't just focus on the end goal. Take time learning. And this is learning in general where I recommend. Learn the topic, because if you try to fly through something, then you're going to turn around when you're pen testing. Oh yeah, I need to go back and study. You got to go back and restudy it. And when you're doing the certification challenge, like you're in the OSCP lab for your exam and you just flew through things, it's going to be more difficult. So the more you learn it, the more you know the material, the more successful you're going to be. And for me, why certifications were important is I tend to not take my time, and I'm giving this recommendations from my own experience. I fly through things sometimes that I don't learn as well, and I got to go back and learn it again. So where if I would have taken the time to really learn that subject, I'd be better off. So going through an exam like the OSCP forced me to learn it better, because I mean I didn't pass it the first few times. I had to take it multiple times, and part of that was being in a rush to take the exam. First couple times I wasn't even ready at all to take it. It's just I wanted to get in there. I was anxious to take the exam, anxious to get the certification. And so take your time to learn it, and it's going to be a lot easier process. Learn the subject. Don't just worry about passing the certification. Don't learn just the minimum. If you go the extra mile, you're going to learn tricks that's going to help you out. If you understand web app pen testing a little bit better, then a lot of these type of things are going to have some web app challenges in there. And if you're pretty good with that, then that's going to make your path a little smoother.
I agree with that, because I remember when I was going through that journey myself. If I think I had the skills, maybe if I was a little more upbeat, I probably could have maybe passed the first time around. But I don't think I would have provided enough value to the industry if I had gotten out under those circumstances, because I really needed much more time to understand business goals and the business side of things before I was ready to start doing this professionally. I wouldn't have traded that experience for anything. But on that same note, I also see I don't want to say it was lost time, but it kind of, it felt a little bit like a sunk cost. If you had to look back, is there anything you would have done differently? Maybe some choices you would have made differently? And that could be career, that could be study, that could be anything.
Yeah, one of the things, if started back over in pen testing again, I would have probably spent more effort learning how to script and code. Spent more time trying to learn Python, and maybe even C or something like that. But one of the things, based on the advice I'm giving here, one of the things I would have went, if I started over again, I would have taken the time and spent more time trying to thoroughly learn it. It's like they say, life, it's, you want to enjoy the journey, stop and smell the roses, enjoy, live in the moment. And so the same thing can be said for studying. Take the time, enjoy the process, do a thorough job of learning. And one of the things I learn a lot from people I mentor, people I teach, and people I help out. And one of my buddies that I mentioned that he got to be such a good pen tester, I was able to mentor him. But one of the things that I kind of learned from him is the importance to reading the documentation, RTFM, read the fine manual, because he'll find a technology he hasn't tested before, and he does more than just go by beyond just what I need to hack it. He's trying to understand how it works. And I had Harmjoy and on my podcast not long ago, and he was mentioning how he'll go through, whenever he found the vulnerabilities with the Active Directory certificate service, he was trying to figure out how Active Directory certificate services work, to see if there was a way to exploit it. So he went through, read the documentation, learned about it. So that's one of the things when I said learn Active Directory and those sort of things, go through there and learn it, because you understand it, you're going to do a lot better job exploiting it. So that's one of the things I would probably go back, and I would have taken more time learning and try to learn it more thoroughly and not be so rushed to get through it. Because there was cases where I took like Offensive Security's Wi-Fi pen testing course. I went through and did enough of it to be able to do Wi-Fi pen tests, but I really should have spent more time thoroughly ingesting the content and learning it better. So that's kind of what I would do if I started over again.
I think that's incredibly valuable, because I really feel the same way, honestly. There's a larger debate, going on these days. Should I learn programming for pen testing and red teaming? And Live Overflow came out with an awesome video about this very topic a couple of months ago. And I totally agree. I think the answer is yes. You should learn programming for pen testing and red teaming, because there's bugs out there, and there's kind of similar bug classes that traverse different languages, and you can kind of have a high level understanding of those bugs. But when it comes to finding 0-day vulnerabilities or doing black box testing, you really need that foundation to understand what kind of bugs you're even looking for. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or if you feel any differently, but that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I kind of agree. One of the things I did pick up from, because for a while I was going to WGU and I ended up kind of stopping, you know, dropped out of the course, I guess, for a more accurate term, because I started teaching at Dallas College. And at the time, it's funny, I'm doing a lot more stuff now than I was doing then. But, this, before that, I was doing my day job and then studying and that sort of thing. And then whatever my free time that I enjoyed doing. And so I quit teaching. I mean, I quit taking the course so I could teach, but I did take a Java course, and, I've taken Python courses over the years, through Pentester Academy back when they had their security tube Python testing course. I've read several different Python books trying to learn it, but just kind of over the years, I picked up enough that if I'm reverse engineering something or I see code, I can kind of see things in there, find information that, hard coded credentials and some of those things, some simple things. But I think you really hit the nail on the head on learning how to do that and build tools. Because what's happened, while they're awesome tools, you've got stuff like Burp Suite that makes brute forcing logins on a web page a lot easier. And before you had tools, you had to know how to use Python or something to script that, or use tools like Hydra that take a lot more effort to use to brute force. So what's happening is tools like Burp Suite, Metasploit, and these other tools have made it easier that as a hacker or pen tester, offensive security professional, you didn't have to know how to code. So it's made it easy that you didn't have to know how. And that's one of the things that I fell under was, using these different tools and stuff. I didn't have to know how to code. But as you're mentioning, if you're going to find O-days, you're trying to find CVEs, there's not going to be any scripts out there to do that because it's just been discovered. So if you don't learn how to code, there's ways to get around it, I guess, manual techniques and stuff. But, as far as tools and stuff like that, you're not going to find it because it hasn't been created yet.
So we were talking about learning programming and how that can absolutely be a valuable skill set. There's a number of different situations where programming really falls under a larger IT umbrella, but especially under offensive security, I really feel like if you don't learn it at some point, on one hand, you'll kind of organically pick it up on the job. But on another, if you don't do your due diligence, you might hit a wall, because that's definitely what happened to me, especially with like bypassing antivirus and log evasion. It's very difficult to do that without any sort of C knowledge. And that just ties back into Win32 APIs and a whole bunch of other nonsense.
Yeah.
But I'm curious from your perspective, because those skills can be used in almost any type of assessment, like literally any type of assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And among them, there's external, you got internal, cloud, web app, so on and so forth. Among those, I'm kind of curious, which do you find the most enjoyment in doing?
In recent years, and that's because I wasn't getting to do as much, I've really gotten more enjoyment in web app pen testing because of just being away from it for a while. Because when I was just getting started out, the first company I worked for, the first year or more I spent doing, first a little over a year, probably about a year and a half I spent just doing, I did some web app, but it was a combination web app and internal, external network. My first ever pen test was a war dial for a financial institution.
It's cool.
So we used to do that annually for them. So it's kind of cool. One of my first type of engagement was an old school, one of the first type of testing. So I got to do a war dial. But yeah, the specialization and stuff like that, going back to that kind of brings up the point to learn these different things, because, Bill write different tools. Some of the people that like Bite Bleeder and Harmjoy, they write a lot of tools. So Bill write those tools, and kind of touch back on something you mentioned earlier on paths to get started. But one of the things I do recommend for people sometimes if they're wanting to go the college route is to get a computer science degree because you're going to learn how to code there. And I've seen a lot of people, and the reason I like to recommend that is, I've seen people that started out with a computer science degree and then got into security. They're able to write tools and stuff. So be able to code, that's not a bad thing. But then again, you can learn without having to go through a computer science degree because you've got some of these schools where people go to school 24 weeks to learn how to code or whatever, those options like that. So I would almost recommend because you can go through and figure out enough on your own or get like Black Hat Python or Black Hat Go and these different books and go through there and learn how to write some of these tools. But I think it's really important to go back and learn how to code in general, how to program, because there's some things that you'll miss out on. So you're only going to be able to do kind of lower level things. But if you actually learn how to program, there's a lot of things, you're understanding algorithms and some other things and be able to write some of your own programs. So I think it's worth learning in depth because you see the people to understand, stuff on that level, how to really hardcore reverse engineer things and build their own programs and stuff like that. Those are the people that are really good. But on the other hand, it's really funny too, because I had Alyssa Knight on my podcast, and Alyssa doesn't know how to program, and she's hacking connected vehicles and drones and, hacking banks through their surveillance cameras and all sorts of stuff. So, I mean, there's different ways of doing it, but I definitely think there's you're not gonna regret learning how to code. I can say that.
I totally agree. Kind of bringing this toward a close, what do you foresee changing in the field over the next 5 to 10 years? Because I can see a whole bunch of different concerns, but I can see a lot of maybe good coming out of it too.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're kind of seeing now, and people were working on that, is a lot more cloud pen testing. Some people have, because of the pandemic, they started moving more to the cloud, and they were planned to move to the cloud to begin with. I think a lot more of what we're doing will be in the cloud. And then, I think there'll be more opportunities for your IoT stuff because it's not like that's totally new, but that's something being leveraged more by companies as companies leverage IoT more, because it was kind of interesting. One of my first consulting jobs was working for a telecom company, although I worked in the consulting division. They were really big on the IoT thing because, with IoT, you can monitor the temperature of coolers, you can monitor, inventory on vending machines. There's a lot of things that automates, and, people are always talking about AI replacing jobs, but there's some simple things like that could eliminate the job of someone is going around the vending machines testing stuff like that. So that's a good point to people listening to this. You're out there maintaining or testing the technologies that's going to automate the other skills. That's where the job is going to be. People always are asking about, what do I think about AI? Is that going to replace? I don't think it's going to replace us anytime soon as pen testers. I think it's going to give us better tools because, when you see some of these tools, especially on the web app pen testing side, find a lot of false positives. So I think it's going to give us better tools, help us with the low hanging fruit a little bit easier. I don't think it's going to replace us. There's a lot of remedial tasks and stuff that people are still doing that haven't been, replaced by AI. So I don't think we have to worry about anything soon. And kind of interesting in that topic, I don't know if you listen to Daniel Miessler's podcast or keep up with his blog, but he was talking a while back because he does a lot of research outside of, just security in general. He does a lot of things around technology, and he was mentioning about generalized or general artificial intelligence, where artificial intelligence, you have to program the system to do this, but general artificial intelligence, the system learns how to do stuff.
That's a scary thought, because
Yeah.
like on one hand, so with technology available today, I can see within maybe like the next year or so, I can see social engineering engagements going to a completely insane level with deepfakes. But
Yeah.
I mean, like further on, if we're talking so far in the future with general AI, yeah, I have grave concerns about the future of pen testing and red teaming. But
I actually think that those technologies are going to, you know, be more of a risk to security in general because people using those against targets.
I
And
kind
so
of
maybe,
agree. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because you think how easy it is to get some people to click on things they shouldn't click on now. And, you know, just how easily people are social engineered and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I hate to poke fun at Rapid 7, but I'm just waiting for the day Metasploit kicks out. Where's John Connor? Tell me now.
That's funny.
Uh,
Speaking of that, I was doing a Wi-Fi pen test one time, and one of the APIs of a company next door, close to my client, one of their one of their access points was Skynet.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's funny. Are you familiar with Davin Jackson at all?
Oh yeah, yeah, yep.
Okay,
I've had him on my I've had him on a podcast and my stream too. Yeah, Davin's a good guy.
yeah, shout out to DJX Alpha. So he I'm not gonna spoil the surprise for anyone, but he has a very crazy follower that goes by the name of Anonymous, who believes that the great Azure, the great true cloud of Azure, is going to deliver us all to singularity, and just like completely like next level insane like cult kind of stuff. But it you could clearly tell the guy's joking. I thought that was really funny. So
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it affects the field for sure.
Yeah, it will. Yep.
So what's next for you? Any cool projects, speaking engagements, maybe other things people might be interested in?
Yeah, I've got Con coming up. It's in person. It's not virtual on the 6th and 7th of October. And then like the last Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of October, I'll be in San Antonio for Texas Cyber Summit. So I'm giving a talk there. Got a couple other virtual talks coming up. One for BSIM, which is a organization for it's kind of a part of Synopsys organization. They've got like a group for a users group to inform people and educate people in security. So I'm doing a talk there. So, and then my podcast continues to go on. So I've got some exciting upcoming guests. I actually have Lewis from Pentester Lab. He's actually going to be a guest on there. I got him scheduled. And then Raina Cahill. She's got a lot of good walkthroughs on YouTube. She had a lot of good stuff on the OSCP, and then she started doing a lot of content on like Web Security Academy through Portswigger. Started doing some, and actually they include her videos and some of the walkthroughs and stuff linked to Portswigger. So yeah, them coming up. So it's interesting. It's been fun with the podcast because you know, I've had people on like you that are experienced, then I had people been in industry a long time, then I had people that are just broke in. So it's interesting to hear all the different perspectives.
Yeah, and like I gotta get, I never know if I'm saying her name right or wrong, but yeah, Rana Khalil, she was one of my first InfoSec Twitter friends, and I definitely need to do one of these with her. Like, I think she has an incredible story to tell. So,
Yeah. So yeah, message her soon because I talked to her first probably back in June or July, and she said that she didn't have a break until like October.
wow.
You know, because she's recording her own videos and stuff, and then I guess what the other podcasts or live streams and stuff she's been on, but you know, she stays pretty busy too. So still someone that said he'd be on too is I still got to get Stoke scheduled, but Stoke said he'd be on my podcast.
Yeah, that'd be really cool too.
Yeah, he's a super cool guy. I got to meet him during the Bug Bash in San Francisco, right before DEF CON and Black Hat in 2019. So I got to meet him at the Bug Bash, and he's just super cool and positive. I mean, just really, he's positive on and off camera. So I mean, he's the real deal.
Yeah. So for the rest of us, you know, we have the chance to learn from, you know, one of the leading professionals in our industry. Do you have any advice, any final thoughts for us? Anything at all?
Yeah, so some little bit of advice I'd like to share, and for those getting started out, they may not see it, but one of the reasons I do the things I do is you hear the saying, it's better to give than receive, and there's a lot of truth in that. And I've always liked to help people, but the more I've helped people, the more self-fulfilled, the happier I am with my life. Because before I got into teaching and doing all this, I used to go to movies a lot, and I would see like 100 or more movies per year in theaters. And so I remember the year I started Pone School and started teaching, I was looking at my movie list and I thought, looks like this may be the first year in a while I didn't hit 100 movies. But one of the things I noticed is I was a lot happier. You know, I don't have a problem with depression, and not that there's anything wrong. People do go through phases, even people that don't have, deal with depression on a constant basis. Everyone's a little bummed out from time to time. But I noticed when I started doing that, I was a lot less, depressed at times, and I was happier. I felt, it's just so rewarding to help people. So one of the things I would recommend is to help others. And no matter where you are in your journey, you could be a week into this and you've got a lot more experience than someone else is trying to start out. So just help each other. And, used to, back when I was getting started in IT, you had a lot of these people that were not sharing information. It was like job security. I know how to do this, and if no one else knows how to do this, I can never be replaced or fired. And that mentality, I see more people are giving, and people are creating content to give back. There's a lot of different ways you can mentor. There's creating content, and you see a lot of people that made names for themselves from creating content that led to them getting jobs. So just help others. Try to help other people out, and it's going to make your life better, and you can help someone else too.
Where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I'm happy to answer people's questions. I answer a lot of questions throughout the day, and do a lot of mentoring and stuff. I mean, a lot of times most of the mentoring I'm doing is someone's asking a question, maybe a call. This is not like 30 minutes a week every week, but always try to have some time to answer questions and help people out.
That's awesome. And I just want to say, like, I think I mentioned it to you on the Hacker Factory. I've been following you for a couple of years now, and like, you're one of my heroes, man. I love everything that you do. I love the amount of effort and energy that you put out into the community, and I want to see that everything going to the next level. I'm really excited to see where you take your platforms next, and I really appreciate you making time to do this with me.
It was an honor. Thanks, and thanks for the kind words. I mean, when we're doing this stuff, you know as well as I do, when you see results, you're helping someone and it matters, then that just goes to show it doesn't matter about the money or the fame or any of that. If you're helping someone, that's what you need to do, and just be able to see the results. That shows me that my efforts aren't wasted. So thanks.
Yeah. Do you have any cool outros that you do?
Not really.
No worries. That's the power of post edit. We could just cut that out.
Yeah, I don't.
But for the rest of you, if you are harboring the first artificial intelligent life form in your mom's basement, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead, hit those like and subscribe buttons. Go check out Phillip Wylie's content online. He's got the Hacker Factory podcast, the Pone School project. Go follow him on Twitter and LinkedIn. Check out his talks. And once again, we thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you all in the